Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Robert was thrilled. This was the first celebration he and Jennifer were hosting after getting married. Friends, colleagues, and some family members filled the house with animated conversations and continuous laughter. The ambient noise, the jokes, the toasts, everything seemed flawless for him. This represented a new phase, a life of accomplishments, of constructing something together with the woman he had chosen to share his days with. As he moved around the room greeting guests, he found himself looking at her and smiling. He felt proud of the life they were creating. The two of them had always been the kind of couple that attracted compliments. They had chemistry, seeming to comprehend each other with just a glance. At least that's what Robert believed. He worked diligently every day to be a good husband. He gave attention, cared for her, and made sure to include small surprises and gestures of affection. He knew how much he had struggled emotionally to reach this point. After traumatic relationships, he carried deep scars of disappointments, betrayals, and broken promises within him. And that's exactly why this relationship meant so much to him. It was like a fresh beginning, a clean chapter, free from the ghosts of the past. The evening continued smoothly, casually, full of side conversations and laughter that spread from one corner of the house to the other. One of their friends suggested a question-and-answer game, typical at parties. And in the middle of this relaxed atmosphere, where everyone was having fun, something occurred that Robert could never have imagined. Not even in his worst nightmare. Jennifer, holding a glass in her hand and laughing, dropped the phrase that would make everything collapse. With a smile on her face, she said, "Do you guys believe I cheated on Robert? Well, but look, he forgave me, right, honey?" The environment, which before seemed full of life, fell silent for a few seconds, followed by awkward laughs from the guests who didn't know if she was being serious or if it was just an exaggerated joke. Some looked at Robert trying to figure out if it was really a joke. Others looked away, embarrassed. His heart raced. His face turned pale. His hands started sweating. It was as if he had been punched in the chest, a dry, strong, unexpected blow. He tried to smile, pretending everything was fine, but his whole body was trembling. Painful memories flooded his mind, past betrayals, lies, sleepless nights, that suffocating anguish he knew so well. Everything came back like an avalanche. For a few seconds, he tried to convince himself it was just a joke, that she would never do that it was just a thoughtless comment amidst the alcohol and the relaxed mood, but he couldn't. The sentence echoed in his head like a hammer. "I cheated on Robert. I cheated on Robert," repeating over and over like a horror movie in his mind. Each time he heard it, even if only inside his own head, it became harder to breathe. He looked at her, searching for a sign, some reaction that would confirm it was just a joke. But all he found was a silly smile, as if it were normal to turn a betrayal or even the idea of it into a joke. He forced a smile to avoid making a scene in front of everyone, but his soul was shattered. Pretending, he had always been good at that. Years of toxic relationships had taught him. But this time it hurt much more because it was coming from the person he believed was his refuge, his safety. The game continued. The music started playing again. The conversations resumed, but he wasn't there anymore. His body was present, but his mind had gone far away. He stayed more to himself, withdrew a bit, avoided eye contact, avoided participating in the games, the jokes, the toasts. He responded with nods, forced small smiles, short words. He just wanted it to end soon. Jennifer seemed not to notice the impact she had caused. Or perhaps she pretended not to see it. She kept laughing, talking as if nothing had happened. And that only increased the anguish inside him. His chest hurt. His stomach churned. That desire to disappear, to vanish from there, to grab the car keys and leave without a destination. But he took a deep breath. He composed himself. He knew exploding there in front of everyone would only make things worse. Hours dragged on. Every laugh felt like a slap. Every sideways glance from friends felt like an invisible stab. The discomfort was evident, but no one dared to comment. And he, with teary eyes, held on as best he could. Each time Jennifer passed near him, offering drinks, smiling, making jokes, the lump in his throat tightened even more. When the last guest left, silence invaded the house as if someone had turned off all the sound in the world. Robert stood still for a few seconds. Jennifer, unaware of the wound she had opened, approached with a light tone and said, "Wow, love, it was fun, right?" He slowly turned, looked into her eyes, and replied with a dry, cutting, pain-filled voice. "You have no idea what you just did." Without waiting for any reaction, he turned, grabbed a blanket, threw himself onto the couch, and stayed there. Meanwhile, she, now silent, stood still, watching, unable to grasp the gravity of what had just happened. The following morning, Robert got up before Jennifer. He barely slept. His head felt like a bomb about to explode. As he drank coffee, he replayed everything in his mind, every detail from the night before. Every word, every expression, every uncomfortable laugh from their friends. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized it wasn't just about a joke. It was about something much bigger. It was about boundaries, about respect, about something that once broken doesn't easily get rebuilt. Jennifer woke up smiling as if nothing had happened. She approached, made some casual comment, trying to sound natural, probably thinking the tension from the previous night had dissolved with the sunrise. But she quickly realized it wasn't quite like that. Robert didn't even look in her direction. When he finally spoke, it was direct, dry, without beating around the bush. He said it didn't make sense to keep going like this, that it had been a huge lack of respect and that for him the marriage was over. She froze. She stood paralyzed. For a few seconds, she thought it was a provocation, that he was exaggerating, that it was just an impulsive reaction. But it only took one look into his eyes to understand that he was absolutely serious. And that's when the panic began. Jennifer collapsed onto the couch, covered her face with her hands, and started crying, trying to find explanations, justifications, anything to ease the pain she was feeling at that moment. And while she did that, Robert remained standing motionless, arms crossed, trying to hold back his own internal collapse. As much as it hurt, he knew he couldn't go back. He said he had spent his entire life erasing himself to hold together relationships that didn't deserve it. And this time he wouldn't do that. She tried everything, apologized, begged, said it was just a joke, that she never imagined it would have that impact, that she had never actually cheated, that she loved him more than anything. She suggested therapy, counseling, trips, fresh starts, everything. She threw every possibility of rebuilding onto the table. Robert took a deep breath and responded firmly. The line that separates what's acceptable from what's not. You crossed it and there's no going back. The shock was so great that Jennifer went into denial for days. She started saying things that didn't make sense, mixing arguments, trying to pull up happy memories, joyful moments, as if that would be enough to erase what had happened. But for him, it wasn't, because that was just the trigger. In fact, at that moment, he realized he had been ignoring many signs, small discomforts, behaviors he had previously preferred to pretend he didn't see. But now everything was exposed, laid bare, like a huge painting hanging on the wall. Still, even though he was determined, Robert agreed to the idea of therapy. Not because he believed the marriage could be saved, but because he felt he needed to understand everything that was happening inside him. He needed to look at his own wounds. He needed to understand why that situation had opened such deep doors within his soul. So they scheduled the initial sessions, and when they entered the therapist's office, something became clear from the start. He was there to heal. She was there to try to win him back. In the first session, they could barely look at each other. The therapist asked simple questions, but every answer seemed to tear pieces away. Robert broke down. He said he felt humiliated, betrayed, disrespected, and that it triggered old traumas from relationships where he had been deceived, betrayed, and discarded, and that as much as he knew that comment might have been just a joke, for him, it was like reliving it all over again. Jennifer listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. She tried to interrupt, explain, say she never imagined he would react like this. But the more she spoke, the clearer it became that they lived in completely different worlds. What seemed light and casual to her was a giant trigger for him, something devastating. The following sessions only reinforced this distance. Robert began to realize that this relationship was much more worn out than he had imagined. He noticed that all along he had been trying to build a perfect relationship on top of cracks. That many times he had chosen to ignore small lacks of care, small cutting remarks, gestures that when added together showed they weren't on the same wavelength. That joke didn't destroy the marriage. It just revealed what was already crumbling inside. In one of the sessions, after a long silence, he looked at the therapist and said something he hadn't yet had the courage to admit, even to himself. "It feels like I loved her more than I loved myself. And in the end, I'm the one who got hurt." The therapist stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. And Robert went on saying he was tired. Tired of always being the one who understands, who forgives, who gets it, who accepts. Tired of molding himself to fit others' expectations while his own pain was being pushed under the rug. Jennifer, hearing this, burst into tears. She tried once again to hold on to what seemed to be slipping through her fingers. She said she loved him, that she would do anything, that they could start over, erase everything, rebuild. But for the first time, Robert realized that as much as he might still feel love, it wasn't enough anymore. Love alone doesn't sustain anything if it doesn't come with respect, care, empathy, and most importantly, emotional safety. They left that session in silence. They walked side by side to the car, but it was as if they were strangers. Once in the car, Jennifer still tried to ask if there was any chance, if he at least considered the possibility of forgiving, of starting over. Robert took a deep breath, looked ahead, and said, "I think you only realize love is over when you start loving yourself more than you love the other person." And for the first time in his life, he felt that he was finally choosing the most important person in this story, himself. When they left therapy that day, Robert already had total certainty about what he needed to do. There was no more room for doubts. The decision was made. As they walked to the car, Jennifer looked at him with tear-filled eyes, silently, trying to find some sign, any opening that indicated he might change his mind. But just looking at his face was enough to understand that this man who so often silenced himself to avoid conflict, who so often put her needs above his own, was no longer there. The Robert who accepted crumbs no longer existed. When they got home, he went straight to the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing his things. Jennifer stood frozen at the door, watching the scene in shock. She begged him to think it over, said it was a mistake, that they could try, that they could get through it. But he didn't respond. He simply kept going, folding clothes, gathering documents, collecting every piece of his own life that was still in that house. When he finished, he took a deep breath, looked at her, and said only, "I truly hope that one day you understand what happened here. But I can't keep living in a place where I have to doubt the person who should love me." And he left. He left behind not just a marriage but an entire history that until recently he believed would last a lifetime. The next day he contacted his lawyer. He asked to move forward with everything. No turning back, no future conversations, no pauses. The decision was final. And for the first time, he felt a strange relief, a mix of pain, fear, anguish, but also freedom. The freedom to finally choose himself. In the days that followed, he threw himself into work. He started occupying every minute possible, as if trying to escape his own mind. But as much as he pretended everything was fine, the truth was the nights were cruel. Loneliness hit hard. The silence of the new house seemed to scream. He'd lie down, close his eyes, and immediately his mind would replay everything like an endless movie where every scene hurt more than the one before. There were nights when he questioned whether he had done the right thing. He thought about the laughter, the trips, the plans, and at the same time, it was impossible to forget what he had heard, what he had felt, the suffocating pain of that day. It was a constant conflict between missing the person he thought she was and the pain caused by the person she had truly shown herself to be. As the days passed, he realized staying trapped in this cycle of pain and guilt wouldn't lead him anywhere. Desperate, he decided to start filling the voids. He went back to the gym. He dusted off the guitar that had been stored away for years. He started going out more, meeting new people, allowing himself to live. And in the midst of this process, he realized he was relearning to love himself. Months went by and little by little, he began to feel whole again. Not completely, of course. Scars don't disappear, but now they didn't hurt like they used to. It was as if every broken piece was slowly being pieced back together, only this time in a much stronger way, much more solid. And it was exactly when he felt more at peace, lighter, more secure that the unexpected happened. Jennifer reappeared. She sent a message asking to talk. Robert thought about it, reflected, almost ignored it, but deep down he knew he might need to hear her out. Not for her, for him. To close the chapter once and for all. They met at the same cafe where they had shared so many moments that at the time he believed were happy. She arrived different. Her face showed sleepless nights. Her expression carried guilt, regret, and pain. She sat, took a deep breath, and began to speak. She said that since the day he left, she had been tormented. That she had tried to move on but couldn't, that the memories, the mistakes, everything weighed on her like a burden she couldn't carry anymore. And then, without beating around the bush, she let out what he deep down had always feared, but somehow needed to hear. That night, what I said at the party, it wasn't just a joke. I lied. I did cheat on you. And I thought that if I said it as a joke, no one would take it seriously, not even you. I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt suffocated, made the worst choice of my life. And when I realized what I had done, I panicked. I tried to hide it, turn it into a joke, run away. But it destroyed me inside. And it destroyed you, too. For a few seconds, Robert felt the world spin. It was as if time had stopped. His chest tightened. His hands went cold. But surprisingly, there was no more room for anger or pain, just silence. And in that silence, absolute clarity. He took a deep breath, held her gaze, and responded with a calmness he didn't even know existed within him. You know, I spent months wondering if I had overreacted, if I was wrong, if I had ruined a marriage over a joke. And now I understand that in reality I left too late. She cried. She tried to seek redemption. She tried somehow to rebuild something that had been dead for a long time. She said she regretted it. That she didn't know what she was doing. That she would give anything to go back in time. But Robert knew. He knew it wasn't about her anymore. It would never be about her again. He looked into her eyes, stood up, and said with a firm but calm voice, "The worst betrayal of your life wasn't against me. It was against yourself. Because you destroyed the one thing you'll never have again, my trust. And you know what the best part is? Today, I understand that the worst betrayal someone can suffer is the one they commit against themselves when they accept much less than they deserve." He placed money on the table, thanked her, and without looking back, walked away free, light, and for the first time truly whole. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.